Hello, I'm Hank Green. I've been a YouTuber for a very long time, and I asked Chelsea last week if I could take over the financial diet for a day because I just want to talk to more people about the creator economy, the gig economy, and making money online in general. There are now tens of millions of people who make some portion of their living being an independent creator on the internet. They make things, they post it on a content platform, and some way money comes to them. I've been doing that for 15 years now, and yet
The silence of YouTube God passing down ad revenue at you without saying a word.
somehow, it seems that most people, including people who do this for a living, do not correctly understand the relationship between the creator and the platform on which they post their content. This is an extremely common business relationship. It's an increasing way that people are making a substantial portion of their incomes, but almost everyone is getting it wrong. The creator economy this year is going to generate about $100 billion. That is similar in size to the motion picture industry. And it's a world that a lot of people
Which, I mean, is a lot smaller than like the video game industry. I think I've seen this a lot because of like the niches that are forming. I don't know if it feels like the actual market value of the creator space is a lot higher than the video game space just because of how crazy the niches can get. Like you can be literally a creator of like people who just collect toys, people who talk about how Thursday is their favorite day or something like that. Like you can literally pretty much be in there's like an infinite space for creating as opposed I think to like video games and stuff where that you have to make a good video game that maybe is a platformer or a shooter or whatever that can make a lot of money off of like gotcha mechanics and a lot of money off of people buying things to be better in the game. I think a lot of creators and platforms face the business problem of a lot of things just don't make money. There's a lot of things that aren't really, I guess, profitable in nature, which isn't a problem, I think. But hearing that $100 billion thing, that's obviously huge, and you never know how the pie is going to be distributed because one day it'll be a bunch of Among Us streamers, and the next day it'll be hot tub streamers, and the next day it'll be bloggers and then podcasters like the Joe Rogans of the world and stuff. So you really have no idea what is going to like take off in the creator economy, which is kind of interesting in terms of how that is structured compared to something that's a little bit more predictable, like how well will the Avengers 2 do if Avengers 1 did this well?
maybe you watching are involved with somehow. But despite that, I think that we have misunderstood how this economy actually functions and what the relationships between the parties are. It makes a lot more sense if we understand that, so let's take a little bit of time to figure it out. So a person who creates content on a platform will often take their creative identity from that platform. They are a TikToker or an Instagrammer or a YouTuber. But while I think constructing that identity makes some sense, that's not what you are. You are a content licensor, and the platform is the licensee. Whenever you post content,
This is again one of the reasons that I'm so bullish on owning your own website. The problem is with your own website, it feels like a store that nobody shows up to. Like you post stuff on your own website, and I mean, I for one, as a developer, love the amount of flexibility and creativity that your own website provides you. But it's actually really hard to consistently post on your own website, and I get it. I think that it's actually not a straightforward process. Like, because you'll see infinite developer blogs where it's literally just like, hey, I'm a developer and this is my first blog post. I'm super excited to be writing. And then they'll write one like a week later and then just disappear off the face of the internet. And they're not gone. The thing is that they're still actively posting on like Twitter. They're still actively posting on Instagram and depending on how hard they go, sometimes YouTube. But yeah, it's just not really a business model that I think that, the owning your own website thing works because it's just really hard to get discovered when you're on page 7 or 8 on Google and there's just no one coming to your website. It really kind of almost not defeats the purpose, but makes it really hard to see the value in it over just having a TikTok account or an Instagram or a YouTube. I think, on the other hand, though, one of the reasons that I am so bullish again about owning your own website is that if you've been following with what's happening with Facebook, for example, and how it's getting, the TikTokification of all these social medias, and you'll see a lot of uh, journalism pages like the New Yorker and the New York Times talk about how this is heralding the end of social media as we knew it for the past decade. I think they're right. You know, when you're competing against literally everyone on the internet for the same type of content, distinguishing yourself is relatively difficult. I think when you have your own website, you have a monopoly on your own area. So even though it's much smaller, you aren't competing with the platform for the sake of the platform. You're competing with yourself, and that allows you to really go wild. And I put a lot of effort into my website for that reason, because I know that the business model is the website is fully and directly aligned with me at all times, versus like if YouTube or Facebook or whatever giant meta company, Google, whatever, decides to change their platform and change their algorithm and stuff like that, creators get swept under the rug. They get pushed out of the way. They feel used and betrayed by the platform. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind when you have your own platform, is that you get to pick the pace, basically.
Content on a platform, you are offering that platform a license to that content. The platform, somewhat implicitly at this point, agrees, and that license grants them certain rights to your content. They can host it, and share it, display it, and monetize it. They do not own it, though they do own the systems on which it is shared. An Instagrammer owns their photos and videos, but they do not own their Instagram account. A YouTuber is a person who owns intellectual property and licenses it to YouTube. That license allows YouTube to sell advertisements against that content, and this is the foundation of their business model, and also of what we are coming to call the creator economy. Because look, none of these platforms exist without the content that is posted to them. They thrive when the content is compelling, when it attracts and retains attention. And so platforms create systems that encourage both new and established creators to work hard to create compelling content. And those systems at their root have two different rewards. One of them is attention, and the other one is money. Sometimes
And I think, we see that reflected in kind of the Netflix earnings call recently that happened, where basically it was super down, and you saw a lot of people memeing on it on like Reddit and Hacker News and on Twitch too. Like Atriot talked a lot about this, and a lot of that is just because people are giving a lot of attention to TikTok and YouTube. Like, at least anecdotally in my stream, you'll hear people talking about culturally what happens on TikTok and YouTube, and not so much what happens on Netflix. Like occasionally there'll be a big Netflix show, but because YouTube and TikTok don't have to pay huge studio prices, they get basically free content from some of the best creators on earth, some of the best individual minds on earth, right? Like, these might not be people who have millions of dollars behind them to kind of like build up a fame and a brand and really actively think about how to spend their money. But it is a way to the floor is much lower than it's ever been. So we are seeing a lot of creators, myself included, and again, I've seen this at least in my own anecdotal past with, when I started doing creative dev stuff on Instagram, and then moved to Twitter, and then moved a little bit to my own website, and started kind of like getting the anxieties around posting to different social medias, having a YouTube channel, and finding a happy medium between all of these is really a process of knowing who you are, what you provide, and what you're looking for. And I think that because those three things shift so much, and they all get blown away by these giant companies just basically deciding that, like, oh, tomorrow we're, not going to give you attention or money, it really starts to affect people's psyches. So being able to, I think, understand that these content platforms are just platforms, and that you should be able to move between them, and ideally keep an audience between them, and understand what an audience means to you in terms of a financial perspective, of like Patreoning versus, like, for me with stenography, where people will find my work separately, and then they'll check out stenography and they'll use it for free, and then some people will convert to paying customers, or living off of ads and sponsorships, but then knowing that that will go away when the sponsors either leave you because your content is no longer popular or vogue, or if the algorithm changes, then you might not necessarily not even be not popular. You might just literally not being suggested to people or showing up in their feeds. And when eyeballs and attention is the core value proposition of these websites to begin with, it becomes actually critical to your business model to get that attention, because without it, you kind of freeze in the cold.
Sometimes attention is enough. Like, no one's getting paid for their tweets, but theoretically, people are getting something out of tweeting them, or else they wouldn't do it. Other platforms, though, especially those that ask for more than 280 characters from their creators at a time, they offer more. Instagram, for example, doesn't share revenue, but there are lots of opportunities for making money on Instagram. There's just a really robust brand deal economy there. It's taken a long time to build. Instagram helped to build it so that there would be reasons to create better and more compelling and higher quality content on the platform. This same thing goes for YouTube, where there is a really robust brand deal economy, and also they sweeten the pot by sharing 55% of the revenue generated by advertisements on videos with the creator who posted that video. But all of this economy has grown up around a really simple arrangement. Content platforms provide opportunity for creators, and creators provide content for the platform. But that is not to say...
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of, again, what was just, we were just saying, right? Where, you know, when you have your own website, you have to be both. You have to be the content creator and the content distributor. And both of those are two different jobs that require different skill sets. You know, the content distributor is more of a job where you go and find the right customer. It's kind of like finding product market fit for your startup, more akin to marketing. And then the content creator is the people who are actively making the thing. So if you're making the thing and you know why you're making the thing, then that's what a content creator is doing. And that's like the same thing as making bread or wood or something like that, and then having somebody market it and put it in a nice package, and be like, buy this table instead of this table because it has this logo on it. And this is just the way it is. So it's interesting that these platforms definitely, I think, are necessary in a way, but a lot of them have led people to believe that they can't exist without them. And I think that that's the kind of core thing that Hank is addressing here.
Say that they are obligated to provide opportunity to any specific creator. They're not here to help any individual succeed. They want creators to succeed on their platform, because success on the platform looks like creating content that is compelling to people and keeps them watching and connected to the content. And if they're connected to the content, then they are connected to the platform. What we are arriving at here is that platforms don't work for creators, and creators don't work for platforms. A YouTuber does not work for YouTube. TikTok doesn't tell a TikToker what to create, though they might give them advice. Instagram gives creators an opportunity to build a business on their platform by having some systems that might surface your content to new audiences, but it doesn't do that to reward the creator. Ultimately, it is doing that in service of Instagram. And if it stops doing...
If you have wares, Khajiit has coin. Or if you have coin, Khajiit has wares, right? Same thing, right? Or it's like, if you have content that's interesting, YouTube and Instagram will push that, and if it's boring, they'll shove it down. And you know, I have been boring and am boring. I mean, like, I have, you know, what is it, 400 subscribers on my YouTube channel, and like, that would be much more of a problem if I didn't put all of my own effort into my own website first. Is basically the idea of you know, having your own thing.
That for an individual creator, that can feel really unfair, because the idea was that we're working together and you, Instagram, are helping me, the creator, build my business. But that's not what they're doing. Instagram is helping Instagram build its business. If there's another creator out there that helps them do that better, if there's another strategy out there that helps them do that better, it isn't cruel or mean to say that they will take those opportunities, because that's what the business relationship is. I think sometimes the way that these platforms pitch themselves to creators does make like a little bit of a false narrative that's about like, we are here to help you do your thing. But honestly, like, this works because creators and platforms want a lot of the same things. But it is important to remember that they do not want all of the same things. Indeed, the creator economy is very much like the gig economy, except instead of the app telling you exactly what task it would like you to perform, the app is just a place that gives you an opportunity to reach people, and there are various and complicated and constantly changing systems that will reward content in different ways if people find it compelling. Now, there are ways in which this is worse than the gig economy. The money is not steady. You have no clear path to the next job. It's less reliable. There's no guarantee of any money at all. Oftentimes, whether this is unintentional or intentional, the scale of the opportunity is vastly inflated. So
yeah, also as being a quote unquote content creator on the internet for the past 3 to 5 years now, depending on when I look at my journal, that day that I started my first blog. Yeah, it's like all zeros. You know what I mean? Like there's basically no money to be made on the internet, or you make a lot of money, right? There's no middle class, I think, on the internet. And I think, the closest I've ever gotten to that is with stenography, where, like, again, stenography does bring me in revenue every single month from people who actually pay for the service. And it feels closest to like a real product that you can buy off a shelf, or like a SaaS API or something like that. And I have customers and they hit me up over email and they ask me questions. But some posts I've done have gone viral in the sense of, like, in the niche that they were, right? Like they'll go number one on Hacker News, or the like number one on Product Hunt, and then nothing happens, right? Like then there's no real conversion. And I think that that's just the kind of game on the internet, right? It's just a bunch of zeros, but then the value is that because it's all zeros, you get this like weird exponential curve where when you start to gain traction, you gain more traction, right? It's like it picks up motion, but like the friction that would actually slow it down is much slower than in the real world, right? So like the coefficient of friction maybe is lower, is a way of looking at it, where if you pick up speed, you maintain that speed and gain speed because you're going faster. And I've noticed that on the internet, where people will comment on something that I've done and then find me in another place. And being able to take someone's work from one area and directly apply it to another area, and see that, like, you get to all these gains basically, I think is just insanely valuable. It makes it so that your work kind of becomes an investment portfolio. So yeah, it's actually also similar to kind of putting money into the stock market. If you start off investing at a 7% yearly APR and you put in $10, you're not going to have that much money at the end of the first year, but by the end of year 25, you're going to have a ton of money, right? Off of that initial investment. So I find that creating content on the internet is very similar, even though websites like YouTube and Instagram and TikTok will lead you to believe that you can get 1 million overnight. And then that'll make you a millionaire overnight. And obviously those two things aren't connected. As I said, some things happen on the internet where you'll get a lot of attention for one thing, but it will never convert to dollars. And sometimes you'll make a ton of dollars on the internet with having very little attention. Like you'll have people who sell very, very expensive things for very, very niche things on the internet, and people will pay for it, but they won't have millions of followers either. So knowing the distinction between the two, I think, is important.
This can lead to people working very hard to create content that ultimately can never pay for itself. But also, there are ways that it is better. It's much more actually analogous to a person who's running their own business and then trying to get their product consumed or sold on a marketplace. You, as the person involved in the economy, are in charge of what you do, and at the end of the process, you have something, whether it is your content or your audience. You can do things with your audience, oftentimes things that generate revenue. So what does this tell us? Where have we arrived? What can we gain from this? Well, what it teaches me is that content platforms really only do 3 things to create their value. Now, they do other things to monetize that value, but the actual value they add are these 3 things. They create systems to host content, they create systems to encourage people to create and post that content, and finally, they create systems to surface the content that the users will find compelling. And
creating content or giving people a platform to create is, the number 1 and 2. And I think that both of those can very easily be swallowed by the idea, again, of posting your own website. Obviously, you can tell I'm biased, but like literally, again, I feel like I'm old enough at the age of 20, ripe age of 28, where I've seen so many websites rise and die, like Newgrounds and all these things that people really base themselves around when I was younger as like a child, that are completely gone now. And then you have like a bunch of new websites, and they very quickly get swallowed up too. It seems like the shelf life of these things is even shorter, but they're not as long as a human lifespan, right? Like if the whole idea of building an online presence is to have something that lasts for that human's lifespan, wouldn't it make the most sense for the human to invest in something that's going to last their entire lifespan? But anyway, the third thing, the distribution, is obviously a major failing on Google's part, where Google has been rewarded time and time again. Well, obviously to promote YouTube videos because they own YouTube, but you know, these major websites that you can post to, like Mediums and Twitters and stuff and Substacks. I think Substack is actually pretty cool. And I also want to make the point that there's no problem in using these tools and technologies, uh, but like using them as your business, you know, I think it's a little bit Achilles healing yourself in the long game. If the idea is to make something that's evergreen and just provides people value, then it's easier, I think, to take a step back and maybe look at what your actual business proposition is if these websites didn't exist, and what you would do if they went away tomorrow. But also kind of like understanding that Google will never put you on the front page unless you get incessantly lucky. So, or have something very niche, long tail that people look for.
Understand this, it is their job to convince creators to make and post quality content on their platform. And there are valid and valuable ways to do this, particularly when it involves sharing some of the colossal amounts of money that they make. Other ways that they do this can be pretty exploitative, like showing creators rapidly increasing vanity metrics that will make them think that they have a lot of opportunity for potential income that they don't actually have. But it is ultimately the decision of the creator whether or not to make content on one of these platforms. Many of those people are chasing a dream, but for some people, it's a dream that does become real. But it's a lot easier to interface with when you understand it for what it is, which is a business. Content creators are small business owners. Creators have a job to do. It's to make content that captures people's attention, that holds onto that attention, and that provides people value while you have that attention. We are there to provide value for our audience. And also, yeah, value for the platform.
Yeah, great vid. Honestly, I returned to this vid a couple times, not a month, but every other month, just to really kind of like remember. You know, this is again like something that we don't really see day to day because we are caught up in the vanity metrics of how many Twitter followers or YouTube subscribers or Instagram followers a person has, and kind of taking a step back and realizing that, like, oh yeah, these are just business people, and I might treat them with a certain level of respect because of how big their numbers are. But that just means that their business happens to be doing well at that point. And you know, I think any good business owner takes the time to think about their costs and their P&L sheet and just all this other things that are necessary for the thriving of their business.